Now, in terms of the actual history of our race, plays itself out in terms of the scientific rationalization and many of the others, there are many wonderful books you could look at. I recommend, for instance, Paul Taylor's um, philosophical introduction to the concept of race. Okay, and you can find it on the Blackwell Publishers. And there are many others. Now, what Paul Taylor does is to examine not only some of the ideas among the naturalists, the zoologists, and all of these types that were in the 18th and 19th century, but he also goes and looks through some of the philosophical questions that are raised. There's also a wonderful scholar at Harvard College by the name of Jerry Miller, who also looks at these issues in terms of some of the big philosophers of the period. However, what I'd like to do is to now go back a little to that theological question and bring up a concept that might be a little useful for understanding what is at work in these processes of exclusion. I'd like to introduce you to the concept of theodicy. Now you may ask, what is theodicy? Theodicy is about accounting for the goodness of God in a world of injustice and evil. It goes like this: if God is all powerful and God is all good, then God should be able to do something about evil. If evil exists, is it that God permits evil and is therefore bad? Or is it that God is unable to do something about evil and God is therefore not powerful? Well, the classic responses have been to bring the problem of evil into human beings. One version basically says that God's infinite wisdom surpasses us, so we shouldn't question it. Another version says that God gave us free will and we screwed things up with our bad behavior. But what's crucial about this Theodician kind of a reading is that it begins to play itself out in quite a bit of philosophical literature. In an effort to make reality, the world, all good, the problem was, how do you account, just as before, for these people who are outside of Christendom? How do you deal with these people who don't fit neatly into the systems of knowledge at hand? Well, the response, as W.B. Du Bois, the African-American philosopher and social theorist and historian, pointed out, the route was to create problem people. Problem people are people who, by definition, belong outside, the outsiders. And this brings up an important element in how particularly existential theories look at the question of race. Because what they bring up is that racism becomes now not about the self and the other. It's about the self, the other, and a category outside of the self and others. In effect, then, racism creates a situation where there are people who are below self and other, and so their struggle becomes a struggle to enter the self-other dialectic, self-other relationship. Because of that struggle, that means that the fundamental aspect of racism becomes the question of what happens when ethical life itself has been suspended.